Well, thank you, everybody. If we could get started. Thanks. I'm Jim Minow. I'm the Executive Director of the CureJM Foundation, and it's great to see so many of you here bright and early. We also have a bunch of families and viewers online as we're live streaming this. So here, I'll wave to them and say hello, and be sure to ask any questions you have online when that opportunity arises. I'm really pleased to be here this morning and kind of give you a brief overview and update of what you might think of as sort of the state of CureJM and where we are right now in terms of our research and in terms of our leadership development. I want to start by thanking all of you for the leadership that you are providing to this organization, and for those of you who are new to the organization, for the leadership that we hope that you'll provide, because quite frankly, we couldn't achieve our objectives without our grassroots, without our families, without all of you who are working day in and day out to push this mission forward. And hi, Denise, how are you? And believe me, the progress is happening very, very quickly, and I'm quite pleased with what we're seeing, both in terms of our chapter development, and because of that chapter development, because of the research that we're funding around the country. Let me say, last night we had a dinner of our medical advisory board, our board of directors, and most of the presenting doctors who will be with us over the next couple of days at the family conference. And one of the things that really struck me, it was really amazing to see this at this dinner, is that we have either physician, clinician researchers, or PhD researchers, lab researchers, doing hard science on juvenile myositis. The countries that were represented around the table last night were the United Kingdom, Canada, Italy, Japan, China, and Turkey. So we had this really, it was really kind of an epiphany, if you will, for a moment, to look around that table and to say, we have the leading scientists in these countries or from these countries who are bringing their training and their skills and really their brilliance, because they are brilliant people, their brilliance to the task of finding better treatments and cures for juvenile myositis. So what are some of the things that are high on our list right now in the research arena? Well, first let me say that we have a big vision here. We really want to move from what you all, and certainly I would have considered to be a relatively slow kind of pedestrian pace of research to something that goes much faster. So when I hear today from anyone really, but I guess I would say from let me just say the research community, that Jim, these things take time, I want to share with you all that that's something we reject. Yes, it does take time. Realistically, we know these things take time. But in fact, we want to move faster, and we are moving faster. I want to give you just one quick assessment, if you will, or one quick illustration of what I mean by that. 3 weeks ago, our board president, Mitali Dave, and I met with the leading geneticists at the Center for Applied Genomics at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Children's Hospital of Philadelphia is generally considered to be the #1 children's research hospital in the country. And if it's not #1, it's #2, and you can debate these, but it really doesn't matter. They are the best. And the Center for Applied Genomics there is also the best there. We met with them on a Monday. By Friday of that week, we had a memorandum of understanding, and by the following week, we had 2 phlebotomists and the deputy or senior research scientist at the Center for Applied Genomics agreeing to come here to take the blood and serum samples, to create serum samples from families to fast-track a genetic identification program. And they believe that they can make significant progress and possibly even identify the most highly suspect genes that cause that cause juvenile myositis within 1 year. They'll have all of the genetic testing done within 6 months, and then they'll have 6 months of analysis, and then they'll have a published report back for us on what they have found. This is something that not too many years ago would have taken 10 years to do. We were able to do this because we could make a very quick decision that we were going to invest in this program. So Mitali and I took it to the board of directors. And the board of directors turned around quickly. We touched base with a few members of our medical advisory board. But because we had the money to be able to act on this quickly, we could take advantage of everything that the Center of Applied Genomics had to offer. Now, can I promise you that we're going to know the gene in 12 months? No, I can't. I can't do that. But what I will say is that as a result of this and as a result of the connections that the Center for Applied Genomics made with our long-standing and extraordinary researchers in this area who have been working on this problem for the past several years, is that we now have a new collaborator who brings to the table extraordinary resources and extraordinary analytic and computing power to help us solve this riddle. So that's an example of what I mean in terms of our ability to move quickly. A second example I'll give you where I think we're moving as quickly, but not quite as quickly, is with a significant new drug discovery program that we are undertaking with the National Center for the Advancement of Translational Science. Long name, NCATS for short. I want to thank Marge Coffey for helping us fund this important program. And essentially what this is a drug discovery program. And what this organization does at NCATS is they help us identify through a lot of the genomic testing that we've already done, myositis targets for future drug treatments. So by targets, what I mean is genetic targets, molecular targets, chemical targets, that they can then run through a process that's called high throughput screening. And they can test those targets for a biologic reaction against about 300,000 drug compounds that are in their library. They can do several thousands of these a day through this robotic high throughput screening that this facility does for us. The goal here is to look at those 300 drug compounds and over the course of the next several years, narrow that down to perhaps a dozen, half a dozen or a dozen, highly, what am I looking for? High potential, thank you, high potential candidates for further drug exploration. The goal here is to identify additional drugs like rituximab. You've all heard of rituximab, and I think some of your children may be on rituximab, is to identify high potential new drugs, either drugs that are already approved by the FDA for other indications, or new compounds that will need to go through an approval process, to give all of us and give all of you more choices in the treatments that your children receive. This is a very exciting program, and in fact we're a little bit out in front with this program because we're starting this program with maybe half the number of targets that ideally we would like to have. But this new program that I'm talking about that we just started with CHOP should move us well down the road to identifying additional targets that then we can quickly put into the drug discovery program at NCATS and NIH. What I can tell you about both of these new programs, as well as really the scientists and the physicians that were sitting around the table last night and who will be with us over the next couple of days, is that these are really extraordinary people. They are extraordinary clinicians. You know many of them. They take care of your children. They are the best that this country and in fact other countries have to offer, and the dedication they bring and really the brilliance they bring, I have a great amount of confidence that they are going to accelerate us first to better treatments here within the next, hopefully, several years. I'd say I'm hoping that 2 to 5 years is a realistic number for us to look at. I'm not sure every physician would agree with that, but that's certainly our objective, and that's how we're moving forward. And as I say to them, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Let's get that done. So, so I'm very pleased on that front. We've done both of those programs, really started them, essentially from scratch here within the last year. And these are major new initiatives. They have moved our research and will move our research from something that, I don't want to say what we've done in the past has not been, major league, very important research, but we've sort of gone beyond bringing myositis experts into our research in terms of bringing now clinical experts with other areas of expertise into our research. The director of the Center for Applied Genomics at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia is probably the leading genetic researcher in the world. He really carries with him that kind of reputation. There are a few others as well, and we hope as a second phase of this to bringing them into the CureJM family as well. And the National Center for the Advancement of Translational Sciences, Jim Ingles, the director of that program, a leading biochemist, both within NIH as well as an individual who comes from industry, used to be a leading research executive at Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. He has a strong background in terms of not only drug discovery and drug development, but he knows what it takes to bring a new drug to market as well. So bringing these individuals onto our team is really, I think, an extraordinary advancement for CureJM, and I think what you will see over the next year is some leaps and bounds and advancements, hopefully in those two areas and others to follow. Well, thank you. So let me, I was not only mentioning that we had these physicians from around the world who are working with us, but I also just want to take a moment to represent or mention to you the institutions that they are with. So those of you who know a little bit about the medical research process, particularly academic research, know that it happens for the most part within a research hospital or a research university setting. And so, our clinicians around the world, they come from places like Stanford University, NIH, Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, which I've already mentioned, which is associated with the University of Pennsylvania, Lurie Children's Hospital in Chicago, associated with Northwestern University, University College in London, George Washington University, and Ohio State. So these are, and I should also say the Bambino Hospital in Rome, Italy. So I think that's a cute little name for. So we have some. We not only have, some of the leading myositis experts with us, but we also have the power and the breadth that those research institutions bring with them. As we look to expand our research universe and really leverage the resources that those institutions can bring. All of this happens because of our ability to build our grassroots and to raise money. So the first thing I want to do is I want you all to congratulate yourself. I think most of you in the room participated in the CrowdRise Challenge. And what an awesome job you all did. Shannon, what an extraordinary job you did in leading that. You all know Shannon. And there's some great New York mafia movies, that you could quote, but I could sort of say like Shannon, without you, I'm nothing. and that's really true. And has everyone met Lauren Alvord also, who is who comes to us through a very unique program with Intel, which is really an Encore Fellows program. So not only do we have the benefit of having Lauren on as an employee, but Intel has the pleasure of paying for her. So that's a wonderful thing for us as well. So, you and I can't do the science. The people who do that science, as I was joking last night, I said, look, in Biology 101, I got a C, so I need to tell you at this dinner last night, I'm very intimidated by all of you in this room. But, we can't do that science. But what we can do is we can create the environment and we can raise the money that is required to fund these programs moving forward. And it indeed will become more expensive as we get closer to the cure, because we will need to move into a series of trials, first of which is called, essentially, preclinical development. So you're getting something ready to go into a trial, a clinical trial. And then you have a phase 1 and a phase 2 clinical trial, and those can cost millions of dollars. Now, our hope, of course, is that we will partner with pharmaceutical companies, and those pharmaceutical companies will pick up the tab for those trials, which is quite appropriate because they're the ones who will be making the profit on any drugs that are eventually developed for myositis, and for juvenile myositis specifically. But sometimes you need to prime the pump, and if you prime the pump, you get the attention of the pharmaceutical companies who then want to partner with you if they see an opportunity to bring a drug for a rare disease with a small number of patients to market. And that's also a part of our larger strategy in terms of what we need to do in raising money, in preparing for this next sort of translational phase of where we need to go in the development of drugs or treatments, improved drugs or treatments for juvenile myositis. We will do this, I mentioned earlier about kind of a big vision. We will do this because we have the wherewithal and we have the dedication of an army of volunteers around the country. A year ago, the board of directors made a decision to expand and invest in the development of chapters and authorize moving forward with the creation of 5 chapters around the country, and we have done that here in Central Texas, where Sissy Taylor, where are you, Sissy, has been thank you, Sissy, a driving force, and Sissy has now partnered with April Dooley, sitting next to April, who is the chair of our first ever Austin Walk taking place on Sunday. I hope we'll see all of you there, which is currently at, I think it's well past the $125,000 mark in funds raised. And I want you to know there are people right now from New York who are plotting to make sure that 125 is a good competitive number, shall we say. So let me just say that I will add chapters in the Pacific Northwest, in Seattle, in New York, and Washington D.C. And all of those chapters have either done or are doing walks as their first fundraising program. And those walks are raising anywhere between $75,000 and up. I'll stress the and up part of that number. So it's really extraordinary what you've done. Yesterday, the board of directors had an all-day planning session to really sort of map out our strategic directions for the future, and among those directions was authorization to move forward with the development of our next 5 chapters in the coming year, and I think we'll probably be looking at 5 or perhaps 5 to 10 chapters a year after that. What does that ultimately mean for us? Well, it means that we have this extraordinary network of grassroots, locally based volunteers who are doing on a local level what CureJM has sort of done on a national level for many years. And what I can tell you is that fundraising is like politics. All fundraising is local. And so as we develop our local grassroots leadership, and thank you for all of you who are already involved, and thank you for those of you who are with us who, want to be involved in the future, is, what we've just seen, what I've just mentioned has happened here in Central Texas, or with our, walk in, previous walk in Seattle and upcoming walks elsewhere. The medical outreach programs and the informational forums that chapters have held have brought new families in, and as we look at expanding our scope, if you will, to other areas of the country in 2017 and 2018, I think we're looking, at the possibility of a couple of additional chapters, perhaps here in Texas, perhaps a chapter in the kind of Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Ohio area where we have a strong group of volunteers, perhaps Southern California. So we'll see, we'll see as we go through this session and other sessions as we have our volunteers here, where that next level of growth is that we are. So we can all kind of do the math, and so if you look at, what the amazing folks here in Central Texas, to cite just one example, have achieved in their first walk. Now remember, this is their first walk. Their first walk. We're not talking about 10 years. We're not talking about we've been building this walk now for 10 years. So this is like a first walk. What will we see with the second walk? What will the encore really be? So this is just amazing. But if you do it, I have to do this in round numbers so I can do the math in my head. But if you think, okay, $100,000 a chapter, and you've got 10 chapters, well, like it's $1 million. And if you have 20 chapters, it's like $2 million. And if a chapter does $200,000, which, believe me, is well within the realm of possibility, now you've got $4 million. And when you have $4 million, you can really get the attention of researchers around the country and around the world. Our average research program now cost is, still relatively small. It's typically a large grant for us is, on the order of $100,000 a year. So if you have a multi-year grant of 3 or 4 years, it's $300,000, $400,000. In research terms, that's a fairly small amount of money. So we also need to get to a point where our grants are larger, and because our grants are larger, we expect more. We can expect more from our researchers in terms of outcomes. We can expect more from our researchers in terms of speed. So one of the ways that we will do this is really through the development of our grassroots network. So I want to thank all of you for the leadership that you're bringing. We are very early in this process, and so to see what we have achieved, just within the last, 7 or 8 months is, in my view, very extraordinary. So I want to thank you all for what you've done to make that happen. Let me stop there and see if we have any questions or have any questions from the folks who are being streamed, and then I'll turn the program over to Shannon and Lauren.
When you talk about setting up other chapters, one of the concerns that I see is how far the biggest city sets up the Midwest or Nebraska. How do you get everyone to communicate, get close during meetings? And I think we have to think about how we use technology to have meetings where we can have people live stream and pull them in, but they can't because they're 4 hours away. They're not going to meet on Thursday night where the doctors presenting.
Yep.
We have to figure out how to do that. I think that's important because everything's driven by this today. People live by this. And
Yes.
if we do that, I think it would be helpful to bring in some people like even in New York, people who are up in Buffalo are not going to come down and go out and walk. It's just never going to happen.
That's right.
And how do I get them to raise money? They're part of it. So.
Right. And for those of you who don't know, that was Kevin Coffey, who's the co-chair of our New York chapter, or co-president, I guess I should, co-president of the New York chapter.
She's the magic figure.
So, great question, Kevin. A couple of things, and I can just sort of share with you my experience, which interestingly is in some ways kind of regional. Is there are behaviors in some way that are, and first of all, you're right. We do need to do more in terms of technology, live streaming, things that we can do using WebEx and others for people who really don't have the time or the inclination to travel long distances. And in fact, we're live streaming part of this conference, which for the first time, I'm really glad to see, because it means we'll be able to reach, many people around the country. But I think there's a couple of things. So first of all, a realistic, if you look at a chapter location and draw a circle around it, a sort of realistic geographic region for a chapter is something on the order of about 100 miles around that circle. Now, there are some exceptions where it's smaller than that, and New York is one of them, and Washington, D.C. is another one. And that's really kind of geographic and cultural, is that people who think, well, I know Long Island is only 40 miles away, but I got to go over 2 bridges and 1 tunnel in order to get there. So there's this kind of geographic issue that comes into play. People in Texas, I'm looking at John and Jenna and Kara in the back there. People in Texas, people in the Midwest, people in Illinois, 100 miles is like a rounding error. And so, I think in Chicago we had people from Southern Illinois coming up, and Indiana, and so it's kind of different region by region. And so, the advice I give to folks is that, in-person meeting people matters. And so in New York, I think what we ended up doing in my previous organization is, in the New York area, we had 3 and then later 4 chapters. We had a Westchester Fairfield chapter, we had a Long Island chapter, we had a New York City chapter. And we had to do that because of the geography, basically, is that the geography just was working against us. And the same is true in Washington, D.C. You would think it wouldn't be, but people in Northern Virginia really kind of don't want to cross the river to Maryland. So it's just a bridge, but it's this kind of like psychological barrier. No, I'm a Northern Virginian, I'm not a Marylander, I'm not going over there. But great question, and I do know in New York in particular, it's something that we're going to need to work on, and I think the best way to do it in the short term is your suggestion. Let's look at how we can do it electronically. Other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. I'll look forward to seeing you around this conference. I'm headed back to the medical forum at Dell Children's for the rest of the day, but I'll be back late this afternoon, and look forward to seeing you all at the reception tonight and all day tomorrow.